Moment. Well, hello, and welcome to another episode of Great Leadership Live. Karibuni, as we say here in Kenya, on this Monday evening, Monday the 23rd. Today's topic is quite sensitive to many. It's a topic we don't talk about. We know we can relate. Somebody knows somebody who knows somebody, but we just don't open up and also seek help. So suicide is the act of intentionally causing one's own death. Some suicides are impulsive acts due to stress such as financial or academic difficulties, relationship problems such as breakups, or even death of close ones. Or at many times also harassment and bullying, especially in school. What we can't do is we can't see what a person is feeling on the inside. So it's always easy to identify. So it's always easy to identify when it isn't easy to identify when someone is having suicidal thoughts. So tonight, our guests here in studio to talk about suicide and their past experiences is we have Jackie Mutere, we have Richard Kiundi, Nancy Kabiru, and our hosts, the man himself, Waweru Njoroge, and Elijah the Invisible on the controls behind. For those watching us live on YouTube or Facebook, you can ask your questions, make comments that we'll bring up on screen. We value your contribution. Today, this experience, we hope through this experience will help sensitize and possibly prevent another loss of life. Waweru, how are you?
Fine, thank you, Martin. How are you doing? It's a very interesting topic, like you said. There's been a lot of feedback in terms of people saying, yeah, this is something we should be talking about. This is something that has a long overdue. So yeah, looking forward to a very eye-opening show.
Yeah. Well, the floor is yours, Waweru.
Thank you so much, Martin. Martin has already introduced our guests and the topic we're discussing, but I'd like to ask the guests just to give us a very brief background about who they are. We know why you're here to talk, but we'd like to know, the way they do tick this box to show you're not a robot. We'd like to show the same thing. We're human. We all just want to know who you are, what you do. And I'll start with Nancy.
Awesome. Thank you, Waweru, and hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us. My name is Nancy Wanjiro Kabiru. I'm a psychologist, the founder of Hisia Psychology Consultants. I'm also a life coach and a clinical hypnotherapist.
And hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us. My name is Nancy.
Thank you so much. Jacqueline?
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. My name is Jackie Mutere. I'm a mother of 5 children, and 5 includes the boy who left. And I'm a mother. I work with the community-based organization called Grace Agenda that supports survivors of rape from the post-election violence of 2007, 2008, specifically those who had children from the violations. And beyond that, I chair the National Victims and Survivors Networks in seeking reparations and justice for past human rights violations. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jacqueline. Richard. We lost Richard.
Richard, I think his system is restarting or something. Yeah.
Okay.
Can you feel my home in the voice? As worried.
Yes, of course.
You can.
Okay. As we wait for Richard to come on, let's just kick off. And I'd like to start with Nancy, actually, and ask a simple question. Let me ask you how you came to be involved in the study of suicide.
Thank you for that. I'd like to just acknowledge the fact that I lost my brother, who we are 11 months apart, 2.5 years ago, to suicide. And I had been in practice and meeting people who are talking to me and telling me they are suicidal. So when it happened to me, then it stopped being a topic that somebody who is going through something. Rather, it became something that I have experienced as a person. Definitely, my family and I were taken by shock because we never expected that to happen. Then the other interest came about because now the clients who are seeking help or who are seeking support, I realized that what they are calling out for is much deeper than just being heard or being listened, rather the involvement of the community. And that's how now the advocacy against suicide became a real passion in me.
Thank you so much, Nancy. Jackie, I want to come to you and ask, put this in context for us. The statement goes, suicide can shatter the things you take for granted about yourself, your relationships, and your world. I want you to help us understand or put it into your own context, what this means from your own personal experience.
It really is the most shattering experience. It makes you question who you are. It makes you question what you believe in. It makes you question your abilities, what you thought about what parenting was, what being a parent is, what being a youth is. It turns your whole world upside down. It makes you question the very existence. It makes you question your very existence. I cannot put it in any other way. And it makes you look at things. It gives you a perspective on life that you've never thought that you had before, and looking at life from outside into the inside as opposed from inside to the outside. That's what it is.
Okay, I really want to bring Richard into this conversation. I keep saying that name, and I know I'll explain to our viewers why. Jacqueline, your son, his name was Vernon, yes?
Yeah, Vernon Jerry,
Okay.
but we call him Chichi. Feel free to call him Chichi. We know him as Chichi.
As Chichi, okay.
Yeah.
Because just again, I want our viewers to actually understand who you'll be referring to actually in this conversation. Richard,
Yeah.
are you online? We can see a blank screen, but I believe your mic might actually be on. Okay, as we wait for Richard to join us again, I'd like to ask Nancy this question. What are the signs that someone is at risk of committing suicide?
Most of the time, you will hear this person saying that they are tired of life, they are getting exhausted, or this life is no longer interesting. You will hear them saying that they are giving up. You will hear them even telling you to your face that if they had a chance of death, they would take it up. And then you will see that they are starting to get isolated or getting involved in activities that are dangerous to themselves and sometimes can be passed on to the people around. You will see them having no interest of socializing, and sometimes they will even write last notes. They will leave messages or hints, or they will say how disgusted they are with some form of relationships that is not real. And they will give you a justification of why they feel that way and expect you to see it from their point of view. So those are some of the highlights.
Okay. Richard, we can hear you. Richard, we can definitely hear you. We just can't see you.
Can you hear? Can you hear
Yes,
me?
we can hear you. We can hear you. We can't see you. And I'm sure you look very handsome. But let's talk about the issues first, and we can see your handsome face a bit later on.
I don't know what's happening with our link. It just went down when we started.
Yeah.
So I moved closer to the router.
Okay.
I just.
Then I'll ask the question. Yes, please. Just let us know who you are, and I ask you the question I needed to ask you initially. Richard? And we've lost Richard again.
Can I just say something about what Dr. Nancy has said?
Sure.
Dr. Nancy said she's described the difference in behavior and character of the person who might show signs. One of the signs that the person is suicidal, and it works both ways. It could be a quiet person that can become an extrovert, or an extrovert will withdraw. And in many instances, you might not know the signs until much later. You might suspect at least once in a little bit, but these are things that become much more clearer in retrospect and after the fact is done. But before then, you can. I mean, for me, I'm a mother, and I had other children, 2 smaller children to take care of. Those signs were lost on me until but they were pointers. I must say that they were pointers, but I didn't.
I was actually going to ask, yeah.
But
I was
never.
going to ask that question in terms. Sorry to interrupt. I was going to ask that question in terms of your experience leading up to Chichi's suicide. Was there anything that you could say? Okay, like you're saying, in retrospect, you can say yes, but now if you were to say, I'm seeing that sign in other parents, children, and everything, that would be warning signs or tick boxes. You need to say, okay, fine, guys, maybe you need to look at this from a different perspective. So for you personally, what were the signs?
First, he withdrew. He withdrew. He was formerly a very, very happy and happy-go-lucky person, and he's a very chatty boy. But he suddenly became withdrawn, and then he also became extremely angry. I'm hearing a lot of noise. Is that my mic? Is that me? Sorry about that. He became extremely angry at the world, angry at me, and I just kept wondering, why would somebody be angry at me? I have his best interest at heart. He knows I have his best interest at heart. I speak to him. I seek him out. Why would he think that he has reason to be angry? What haven't I done? What should I do in order to make him understand that really I have his best interest at heart? And so I don't know what anybody would, anger is really a key pointer. Just anger at everybody and picking quarrels. He even picked quarrels with the dog. A dog that he formerly loved, he started beating the dog up and just delighting in the squeal of the dog. And wow. I think perhaps, I don't know, feeling some gratification when he saw that there was some reaction from the dog and some visible reaction, and perhaps maybe he thought that I did not react as the way that he wanted me to react. And perhaps he also thought, I thought at one point, I thought it was a manhood thing, because he kept, when I tell him, Chichi, you're the last person in the kitchen, you're the last person at the table, you know the rules in the house. You clear the table, you're the one in the kitchen, you're the one who has to clear up the kitchen. And he says, men don't go into the kitchen. Men don't do that. And that's amazing, because Chichi never knew his dad. Chichi died, his father died when Chichi was 1 year old, so he never knew his dad. So he's never seen another man in this house. Okay. So he knew very well that we did everything together from the time he was born, from the time he knew. And he never had a problem with that until just just when he grew up. And so when he turned 20, I thought, is it a manhood thing? Is it a teen thing? Is it a youth thing? Is it a personality thing? And personality, I'd also like to just agree with Doctor that personality also plays a big, it has some influence on how people react or respond to things, because Chichi, formerly being a very happy person, became a grouch. And that's when I knew that there was something really, really wrong. And then one day, as I think about it, one day he actually tried to commit suicide, but I just ignored it. Like, this is just some nonsense thing, and I just brushed it aside, and nothing happened. But I just remember feeling a chill in my spine when he did what he did, because he jumped up into the kitchen and he just took some tablets that are there, some tablets that we use for the chickens, because my son has got my other son has got some chickens, some pets, and he just mixed it. But I didn't think he was doing anything at that time. Then he mixed it, and then later on, my son came and told me, "Mommy, did you see what Chichi just did? He just drank the chicken feed." I said, "Did he?" And I just froze in my seat. And then later on, I think he started vomiting, and he had an episode outside. And then after the vomiting, he just chilled, and then we forgot about it. But then that was long before he actually now started withdrawing, because then was now the time when he was more expressive. He would be more angry. He would threaten to beat his sisters. He broke every single glass item in this house, every single glass item during a fight. If it's not one fight, it's another. Either we're trying to restrain him, or we're trying to stop him from fighting somebody else, or trying to stop him from having an episode. And every single glass item in this sitting room does not exist, simply because of that. So there's so many factors and indicators, and those are things that you can think about in retrospect, but those are some of the indicators that tell you that somebody is going down, there's something wrong somewhere.
Okay, I want to bring in Richard. I think we have him now. Richard, I asked Jacqueline the question about describing her experience leading up to her son's, to Vernon's or Chichi's suicide. And I want to ask you the same thing. Was there anything that you noticed that was not normal, or something that was off? You need to unmute.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, you're unmuted. That's fine.
Okay, let me do on the laptop because I've got both the laptop and the phone.
I was getting feedback on one of them.
Can you hear me?
Yes, absolutely. Just switch off one of the other devices.
Hello. I have to put off the phone.
Yeah.
Yes, I've put off the phone. Okay.
Okay.
Oops. Yeah. So here. Yeah. So. Thanks.
Right. As Richard prepares himself, I want to ask Dr. Sorry, Nancy, Dr. I'll call you Dr. just from going forward. The World Population Review ranks Kenya, right, as position 114 among 175 countries with the highest suicide rate. Statistically speaking, what do those numbers actually look like in Kenya?
Looks like the phone.
All right. So before I answer that, I want to just acknowledge Jackie's pain and process, grieving the loss of her son. Definitely, it is hard for anyone, let alone imagining a mother or a father who has lost a child. And I believe you will find healing and you will find resolve and keep doing what you're doing. I have been seeing you being very vocal and talking about it. So I know you will find the healing. And anyone else who is going through such pain, feel free to reach out for professional help. It is important because if you don't address it, it may lead you into more distress. Now, if we look at the number of people who die by suicide, you've seen the ranking of Kenya as 114. That shows we are not at the bottom, but the number is steadily increasing. So the World Health Organization's numbers indicate that there are 800,000 people who die of suicide every year. And if we look at that number realistically, then it points to a person dying every 40 seconds. A person is dying by suicide. That is alarming when we look at during this time we've been talking, how many people have taken their lives. It brings the reality of the incidences to us. Then when we look at the curve, or how the numbers look like, young people between the age of 15 to about 40 years are more active to taking their lives. Now, if I assess this psychologically, it's because of the transition or changes that they are going through and the demand of life. So they don't have that ability to maybe take care or deal with the stresses they have at that particular time, or their identity, association, relationship is completely warped. And so they address it from an aggressive manner and reach this resolve. Younger people below the age of 20, even below the age of 14, also take their lives, and people beyond 60 years old also take their lives, but the numbers are very little. So the active age, which is 15 or 20 years to about 40, which is the productive generation, are the ones who are more prone to suicide. Over to you, Aweru.
Yeah, there's a question I was going to ask about that. I'll come back to that because there's that aspect of the curve and linearness. I think we need to get into that a bit more. Okay. Richard, are we okay? Marta, will you unmute him? Richard, hi.
Yeah.
Okay, we're okay.
Hi, how are you? Sorry about that.
No, the technology.
Yep, now I'm okay.
Okay, I want to ask very quickly. I'm going to ask the same question I asked to Jacqueline. I wanted you to describe your experience leading up to your son is David, yes?
Yes, David.
Okay. So the experience that you went through leading up to David's suicide, the telltale signs or anything that you noticed that was off?
There weren't any. He was normal. He was happy. No, there weren't any. You know, in the family, he was the guy who, you know, would give a shirt off his back to somebody else. You know, the most generous. He basically was the guy who would offer if there's something to be done. He'd be in the front line offering to do that for all of us, his sisters, us, his mother, you know, his brother, everybody. So we never noticed anything, including that that particular day when he died by suicide. By the way, I found it more expressive to talk about somebody dying by suicide, because then it doesn't apportion blame. When you say somebody committed suicide, you know, you are apportioning blame, and already
understood.
That is a negative. That's a negative one, yeah. But I prefer to say that somebody died by suicide. So the day he died by suicide, we were actually sitting where I'm sitting now with him, his mother, and generally just talking. And I just come from Nairobi, from town. There was the previous weekend I'd hosted some guys in a farm I have in Matu, and the goat was not finished, so I brought some pieces. So when I came, I found him and his mother. They had put it in a pot and they were boiling. And the first thing he told me was, "You are Rufu Nasikia, you are not part of it." You know, the normal happy guy. Then, you know, before even that got ready, he left us. We were just sitting in the sitting room. He left us. He went to his room, and he never came out again. So basically, I'm just saying there were no signs at all.
Okay. Then let me ask this
or
question.
None that I could pick.
That you could pick up. Let me ask a follow up to that. Then, so what is it that you struggled? Then, what did you struggle with most when David died by suicide?
Yeah. My biggest problem was, you know, I felt like I'd failed him. You know, I kept on asking if there was something I could have done differently. You know, but I've never been unable to come up with anything. Let's just put it that way. But you know, that feeling that somehow as a parent I failed lives with me. Of course, I got used to you know, I've accepted that it happened, but basically it is still there. That was there a way I could have treated this young man and he would still be with us? You know, he died at 28. He was just qualifying. The final test for piloting was the following day. He had booked his tests and everything. On phone, his mom was listening. You know that he'd gotten a route he's always wanted. So you know, it's a thing like, what as a parent, where did I go wrong? And I've been unable to answer that particular question. I'm no nearer to an answer. But what I've also done is, because I know there is no answer, so I've kind of gotten used to this happened. I have to learn to live with it. And whatever questions I ask will not change anything. I'm just torturing myself, you know. So there's basically there's no need to do that.
Okay, thank you, Richard. Jackie, there's something that Richard has said I want to follow up with you actually now. Have you started to, or when did you start beginning to accept the finality of Chichi's passing? You need to unmute.
I'm saying that I don't know that it's even an easy thing to answer. That have I started to, or when have I accepted? I think, gosh, maybe when I go into his room, when I see his clothes, when I look at the picture, when I don't see him, when I can't serve him food, and he had a very healthy appetite. I think maybe that's when I know that really he's gone. When I look at the graveside, or I remember that there's just one child missing, or all the plans that we had. Perhaps that's when I realized that he's gone. Or when we went to try and clean up his room at times, and we've never been able to fully clean up his room because we always end up getting into a quarrel with each other. The ones who have survived that suicide. because nobody wants anything of his to be touched. Everybody wants everything of his, so everything of his is just here. So I don't know that you can just accept it. And at times, as David has said, that you end up torturing yourself, and maybe you want to. Maybe at times you just want the torture just to feel that maybe it's something that you deserve, or that you know it's some form of healing. I don't know. I don't know what to say. I don't know. I mean, even when he was being lowered into the grave, I don't know. I can't. It's I don't know. I don't know what to answer you.
No, there's no. I mean, there's no right or wrong answer. We just wanted to get an insight into the experience, because a lot of people will not be able to experience what you've experienced, and it's hard, and we sympathize. We understand. We don't understand because we've not gone through it, but it lets other people into a world that you're going through, and you know, it brings to light what we're trying to bring to light. It happens, and people don't talk enough about it. You have to let me come and do that, and for that, we are grateful, and I'm sure a lot of our viewers are as well. Nancy, then let me come to you in terms of the more technical things. The premise of suicides. What are the theories, or how many different theories of suicide actually exist?
There are different types of theories. I'm just going to address three. The first one is called interpersonal theory, and this is by Thomas Joyner, and it states that for somebody to commit suicide, they feel a lack of belonging, and this is also stemmed to their own self-perception or identity. Allow me to use an example. What is his name? I'll call him the Duke. Yeah, Richard. Richard said that when he came home, I'm using this as an example, when he came home and he found them making soup, he was told, "Hey, Supu, you're not part of it." Now, as a professional, that statement alone tells me that there was a feeling of inferiority or lack of belonging. He may have wanted to be part of what event was going on during the weekend with his dad or something like that. So they'll give hints, but if you're not in the professional setting, you would not be able to pick this. The second thing would be the person would feel as though they are a burden. So in a burden to themselves or a burden to the society, feeling like they are never good enough, or even when they do something, it doesn't get the recognition that they feel it requires. So this is the second argument of the theory. Then the third one would be that the person has already overcome the fear of death. So I'll use the example of Jackie. When the son hit the dog, there is danger in that. Definitely, maybe the animal would react and bite you. And so this person is looking at, when it's severe, how would I feel? Or then seeing that animal in pain registers something mentally to this person. Then at that point, then you would know this person in a way has overcome the fear of death. And for those people who attempt suicide severally, they want to test, if I take drugs, how painful is it? You know, if I slit my wrist, how painful is it? Or if I hang myself, how painful is it? They're trying to overcome that fear of death. So you find this person, you find this theory looks at those three aspects. Then there is what we call the social learning theory. And this argument or theory states that the person feels that the society, the family, the society, and where they are involved in, say the environment, has fully failed him. So they don't feel like they can be of any good or product, they can be beneficial to the environment. Neither do they feel if anything changes, it would benefit them whatsoever. So they look at it negatively and they stand by their ground. The third one would be the religious aspect, where we explain why somebody would take their life as an evil act, or somebody with a bad belief, or evil spirits within themselves, regardless of which religion you look at this. So if I go back to the social learning theory, you find this person would have given you some hints, or even if you try to give them help from your angle as somebody who has a relationship with them, they are not open to that support.
Thank you so much, Nazi. Richard, I think you touched on this before. I might want for you to expound on it. Are there any particular coping strategies that you particularly deploy, or you've adapted to deal with the loss of David? I don't know. Some people maybe do the religion aspect. Some people might pick up golf or whatever the case may be. But what have you personally done in terms of using a coping strategy?
Okay, one of the things that was, and I hope the listeners will hear this, that when you tell somebody that, I mean, you know, you've just lost a child to suicide, and then somebody comes and tells you, you know, stories of the Bible, Job, I don't know what happened to Job and what happened to who, it hurts.
Okay.
Or somebody comes and tells you that they understand how you feel, it hurts. Because, oh, it's God's will. Because what you're looking at is you want your child back. And nobody can understand how you're feeling. Anyway, basically, my coping mechanism has been, I spent 3 months with David in India when I was in hospital, and we took a lot of photos. Just before then, we had taken a holiday to the coast with him, a 3-day holiday, just, you know, just bonding, because I was very friendly with I'm very friendly with my children. In fact, some people come here and start wondering whether it's me and my sisters, not my children, because we have that freedom. So what I have done is, on my laptop, all those photos are the screensaver. So, you know, they keep on passing. I keep on seeing him. We were also, just like Jackie said, we were also unable to get rid of his belongings. And this is 3 years down the line. His room is still intact. The only thing which I took out was a pair of shoes his mother had bought for him, which I had admired. So I used them. But everything else is intact. The wardrobes, you know, everything you find, his pilot things, everything is there. Because we are unable to kind of, I don't know whether it's a way of thinking that, you know, by keeping them there, we have him here. But at the same time, as a family, we did agree and we accepted that we've lost him. And in fact, we had made a point of not hiding that he died from suicide, because a lot of people hide that. We just went very open and talking about it, because I talk a lot about losing my son to suicide. I feel that kind of, you know, allows me to live my life, because I've put it there that this happened. It's like, you know, there's nothing I can do about it. So I have learned, and my family has also been supportive, and they have also kind of taken the same stance that let's all accept that we loved this young man. He loved us too, because we know that. But whatever battle he was fighting, like there's the thing I'd given to Martin to see if he can screen it, that talks about the battles that he's fighting inside themselves, which you will never know. So basically, it's only that it's a war that he's fighting in himself, and he loses the battle. There is no shame when soldiers lose a battle and die. So this is a soldier who was fighting a battle we'll never understand, we'll never know, and possibly he won a lot of them. You don't know how long he's been fighting, maybe the last 10 years. So he's been a victor until the last battle is what he lost. So if you look at it that way, then you do appreciate and understand and live with it, learn to live with it.
Okay, thank you, Richard. Jackie, do you want to add anything to that? There's a question I want to ask you, but I'm assuming you also have your coping mechanisms as well. Sorry, Jackie, you need to unmute.
Sorry.
That's okay.
I'm saying that I had no coping mechanism whatsoever, so eventually I also hit depression myself.
Okay.
And I just couldn't cope. I couldn't believe he had done it. I couldn't believe. I just kept asking myself, how did he reach there? How did he get to the place where he can't get help from me or from anybody else? How did he reach there? what was it that was so deep and so magnificent and so humongous that we couldn't manage together? And it also reflects on me as a person. He couldn't come to me. Was I that aloof? Was I insensitive? And those things just keep going on in your head, all around your head, and you just can't cope, and you just can't imagine. And all you just want to do is for him to come back. When I saw the light going out of him, when I finally just opened his eyes, and I didn't see any response, I think that's the most earth-shattering experience in my life. I couldn't believe it. Even when we were waiting for him to be processed, to be taken to the morgue, and he was just in the hospital, I kept going back to that room. I couldn't believe it. So there were no mechanisms that I can say that you could do this and do that. And so when I hit the depression, I didn't want anything to do with God. I didn't want anything to do with church. I didn't want to cheat anyone that I was going to, I couldn't be other people. I couldn't be a person for other people. I just wanted to be me and deal with me and my son and what it meant to me. My husband had died almost 20 years ago when Chichi was about a year old. And so the pain of a husband dying is very different, because there you'll be able to cope with it a little bit more, because you have a distraction, you have to deal with the children, and you have to deal with the issues of life. But dealing with the child and going to bury the child next to his father, I think it's the most wicked thing. I had no coping mechanisms. And so after I hit the depression, for a few months, all I did was just sit in the house. I didn't take a shower. I ate at times I didn't eat. I didn't do stuff. So one day, my children just asked me, "Mommy, are you going to come out of that t-shirt?" So that's when I realized that I hadn't taken a shower for a few days, for several days. And I hadn't come out of the bedroom, and I didn't feel like eating, and I felt like eating. I was hungry, but I didn't know what to eat. There's just a block of ice in you that can't just go away. It just doesn't go away. And so when I decided, when I realized that I hadn't taken a shower for some days, I actually took a shower. And so when I took a shower, I think water is very refreshing. It's very cleansing. It's very healing. I stepped out of the bathroom and suddenly looked at my house that was just a bomb blast. Nothing had been done. The kids had been managing on their own for such a long time. And I hadn't told anybody. I hadn't told my family. I hadn't told anybody. And nobody was coming, because also nobody knew how to manage me or how to manage with the grief or how to deal with it. And so that's when I realized that I had to just shake myself out of it, because now I had to manage these other small children. And so that is how I actually came out of my own personal depression and just started taking a day at a time. And so when I actually talked on that particular clip that time, I was asked by the church who had supported me to take Chichi home, if I could just speak to some youth. They were having a youth program, a youth forum.
Yes.
And I just went to, I really just went to, the pastor told me, he had asked me the previous night, and I said, I don't know if I'd be able to stand. I don't know if I'll be able to say anything meaningful, because I don't know what to say. And he said, just let God give you grace to say what you need to say. So when I got there, I realized it was much bigger than just a youth forum. I thought it was a church youth forum. I realized that there were other partners. There was the CAS, ICT, National Youth Council, and all these government things, institutions, and other partners. And they were recording it. I didn't even know they were recording it until the clip came out later on. And so I, first of all, even thought, maybe I should get some money out of this. And then I thought to myself, what about those mothers that I had, and all those other children that I left at the mortuary? Of what value is it? Is Chichi's life worth, even if it's 50,000 per session, is his life worth that much? That's when I decided that I would dedicate every single speaking engagement to his memory. that there's no person who has to go to such a deep pit or dig himself such a pit that he can't come out of it. And that for the youth who think that, children are born because they are wanted, they're not accidents. So why a child will feel rejected for one reason or another, I don't understand. But I'm just here to tell a child that you're needed and you're loved and you're not an accident. And to tell a mother, perhaps who's had whispering behind her back that her child committed suicide, whether she was a good mother or a bad mother, it's not because of that. Things happen in this world, things that you don't have control of. And for that reason, that is why in Chichi's silence, he still speaks, because this message goes out. So I have no coping mechanism and except to dedicate every speaking engagement to Chichi's life.
Thank you for being very brutally honest. And it's very powerful share on that clip. And you let people know where we can actually get it. But yeah, we can share the clip. Nancy, I'm going to put you on hold just for a bit. I just want to come to Richard. Just give him a bit more time because we lost him for about 15 minutes at the beginning. Richard, this question goes to you. If I was to say I lost my mom to cancer, everyone would understand and empathize with that specific kind of grief. But I lost my son to suicide. From your experience, how is grief after suicide different from other kinds of grief? I'm not undervalue any kind of grief, but this kind of grief.
You didn't finish your question.
Yes.
You didn't finish your question. I think I
said,
kind of lost.
Yeah, I said I lost my mom. I lost my mom to cancer, and everyone understands it, empathizes with that grief. But I lost my son to suicide. I was asking from your personal experience, how is grief after suicide different from other kinds of grief?
I think one of the tragedies is that it is so sudden. Because, if it is a sickness, you can see the person going, for example.
Yes. Yeah.
But I looked at death from suicide as something like an accident. For example, somebody steps out and a matatu runs him or her over. So it is the suddenness of the happening that really that is really different. But internally, myself, I'm talking for myself, that death is death, regardless of what caused it. So when I grieve for my son, I grieve for a child I lost to death. The matter of dying is not important to me in a way, because the thing is, if like I said, I kept at first I kept on wondering whether I've been a bad parent or whatever it is, but I know because there are a few reactions here and there. If people out there would point out and say this guy lost his child to suicide, it doesn't matter to me. It doesn't bother me because one of the things that I've looked in life is a positive attitude. As I think, as you know, if you've been following my story, a few years before I almost died of cancer. So it's not like it's not like I'm new to that kind of thing. So I'd rather look at the positives and ignore what the negatives, the naysayers will be doing, and live my life knowing that I gave the best to my child. But as I said, because there was a battle he was fighting in himself, which I have no idea. I mean, everybody has got their own issues, but I had no idea, I had no control. If I had known, of course, I would have put in something, but I didn't know. Now, I cannot therefore blame myself for something that I had no idea was happening, that I had no way of knowing how to. I mean, if you don't see the enemy, how would you fight them?
Yeah.
Therefore, you cannot have lost that battle. You cannot have lost that battle because there was no battle.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's about that. Yeah.
Okay, Nancy, I want to ask you about the myths. Now, Jackie, there's something Richard had mentioned early on and something you touched on. I'm going to come back to you, but let me ask Nancy first about the myths and misconceptions about suicide. And then, Jackie, I want you to tell me about whether you ever feel stigmatized as a result of Chichi's suicide. So let me come to Nancy first and ask, what are the myths and misconceptions about suicide?
All right, thanks, Waweru. Myths exist out there, and myths are because people look for ways to explain or justify a stigma. Then misconception, these are rumors people have because of the lack of understanding around something. So when we talk about death by suicide, it is sudden, it is shocking, and it is it's a behavior opposite what we know. We expect death to happen because of a natural cause, not by a personal choice to take their own life. Now, that shock and the perception of the society to an individual causes there to have myths and to have misconception. In our African society, for example, there are different cultures that look at death by suicide as something that happens within a particular family, a particular setting, as punishment or as being cursed. And so, because we associate ourselves as Africans, then you want not to be branded in that way. So that is my view on myths and misconception.
Okay, thank you, Nancy. Jackie, back to you. Do you ever feel stigmatized as a result of Chichi's suicide? Sorry, you're on mute.
Oh,
I've done it.
all right.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. There was initially the feeling and how people would perceive me and look at me. I don't know. It is stigma actually, because even many of his friends, everybody knew him around where we live here, the Matatu boys, and because he was a youth and he would just go at times, jump on a Matatu and go to the end of the route and then come back, and so they knew him and they knew who I was. And so even as recently as last week, I was on a Matatu and I was coming home and someone said that the two boys started whispering and looking at me and saying, "You see this lady here? This is the mother of that boy who killed himself." You know, and I don't know whether I feel more sad for them because they don't understand what happened, where it came from, the circumstances, the environment around it. But I will tell you that there's also, immediately it happened, during the funeral, somebody talked about how Chichi was extremely selfish because he took his own life. And that was a very selfish decision. I can tell you for free, that person is not welcome in my house anymore. And
I'd imagine not.
yeah, and my kids are the ones who they're the ones who have actually said that that person is never coming. We're never talking to that person again. She can go. She can do what she wants. She will never be welcome here, and she can go and look for people who she thinks are more qualified and more selfless than Chichi. Because I would also like to know what kind of value addition that person added in Chichi's life, what she added. And so insensitive things like that are perhaps, just as Dr. Nancy has said, maybe a way of explaining away issues, because you don't really understand why somebody would hang themselves or do anything to themselves or do away with themselves. But feeling stigmatized per se, I really don't care what you think or what you say. I mean, that's just your business. It's really up to you. Okay. With me and my relationship and my son and his circumstances around his demise, hey, that's my business. You'll go with, you'll meet with your God. Me, I'll meet with mine.
Yeah. Okay, thanks, Jacqueline. Richard, you had touched on this very briefly, and I need you to expand slightly. And I'll throw the same question to Jacqueline as well. From a point of incomprehension, basically those who obviously have not gone through it or cannot fathom what experiences you've gone through, what kind of questions really, let me use the word properly, which kind of questions really piss you off? Yeah, or what they do, they get on your nerves, or you feel asked too often about David and Chichi's death. I think one of the ones that I'd come across is, did he leave a note? And those kind of things. Do you get asked those questions? And I mean, yeah, how do you react to them? And yeah, how annoying in terms of those kind of questions, or how often do they come in points where you're saying, listen, guys, I'm tired of answering these questions, and I don't feel like answering these questions. They're not relevant to my son's passing and what have you. So I just wanted to find out which are the ones that really get on your nerve.
So Jackie or Richard? Okay.
Richard first.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, those questions are there, you know. I mean, did he leave a note? And of course, I say we didn't look for it in the first. Okay, the police came and went through the room, and you know they didn't give us anything. But then, like I said earlier on, and I think Jackie touched on that, that really my life and my son's life are our business. What the rest of the world thinks about, if you want to be sympathetic, you're welcome. If you want to criticize, you're welcome. That is your business, really. So actually, I got to a point where nothing annoys me, nothing bothers me. What I know is the memories that I have of my son, a loving son, an obedient son, a happy son. You know, the guy who you send him. In fact, he was a guy who would be like, I never used to drive. It'd be the guy like, you know, hey, you take me to this other place, you know, that kind of thing. That is the memory I have. That is the memory I have. That's the memory I live. And I refuse to have people's comments or people's whatever to change what I have in my heart for my son. It will not change. It's not going to change.
Jacqueline?
For me, I think it started off with my neighbor, I think about 3 days after that. And they, you know, the neighbors normally come to say pole and to wash dishes and to drink tea. So I don't know whether the tea is made for them to come and have fellowship and talk about the death or what. So she came to the corridor and asked me, actually, na ni nini? Ilikuwa ni nini? So I first of all I gulped, because you can feel Tabasco rising from your feet, and it is coming up. Pilipili is coming up into your system. It comes up to your stomach. It comes up to your chest, and you want the pilipili, the Tabasco reaches over here, and you want to say something. So what I did is I took her to the site where he had hung himself, and the rope was still there. And I just told her, look up there and answer your own question. And people ask me if he left a note. He never left any note. He never left anything, but he used to write a lot of stuff. And so those are the books that, those are the memories, as David has said, that at times I look through and try to understand what he was thinking about, where he was, what his mood was. And so those musings and the things that he would write is what I prefer to keep as memories. As for those who ask those very insensitive questions and things that piss me off, I think now I don't know whether I would answer them or would tell them to go and commit suicide and answer themselves. Maybe that would be more my style, because I'm highly intolerant of people who are not sensitive to people and things and situations that you don't understand, you do not appreciate. And so, and maybe also time has come, maybe because now I've spoken about it openly, people just don't ask me those questions anymore. And they find, they wouldn't, maybe they wouldn't. And even if they ask me why he did it, I'd ask them to tell them, wait until they meet with him in heaven or where they have gone to go and ask him the questions, because I don't know. If I knew, I would have stopped it. I don't have the answers to those kind of questions. Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Jacqueline. And I want to pick that up. Something you just said now, and it applies obviously to everybody who's here. And I'm going to direct this to Nancy. In twofold, right? The first one is, what advice do you have for family or friends who may be dealing with someone who is feeling suicidal or has suicide ideations? And are there support groups for suicide survivors? Now, when I say suicide survivors, I'm obviously referring to the likes of Jacqueline and Richard. Are there support groups for suicide survivors in Kenya? So the first part is, what advice would you have for friends or family who notice somebody might be showing signs of suicide ideation? And are there support groups for suicide survivors in Kenya?
All right, thank you so much, Waweru. So if you are aware of somebody who has suicidal ideation, or who is threatening to commit suicide, one thing we need to be very much aware is whatever they are saying is not a joke. So don't take it lightly, all right? And then help them understand that you're willing to support them to overcome the challenge. So ask them to tell you in their own words how or what they need to change in their environment, or what improvement were they looking for, or fulfillment haven't they been able to achieve to that point. Try not be judgmental, because as Richard and Jackie have said, at this point, this person is in so much pain that they cannot be able to express. So your reaction to their expression of the intention will either trigger them to actually go ahead and do the act, or push them to hold back, in the sense that there is hope in life. Then take them to seek professional support. It is important to have a professional therapist or psychiatrist assess what the challenge would be, because research shows that when somebody commits suicide, almost often there is a mental health disorder or challenge they are going through at that particular time. And because with mental health issues, we cannot be able to tell, you cannot see the physical bleeding, they need a professional to work with them. Then look out for behavior change. Be very cautious, or be very keen to observe what behavior changes this person is bringing forward. Are they withdrawing? Are they talking too much? Are they indulging in drugs and substance abuse? Are they clean all of a sudden, or are they untidy? How is their communication? Are they angry? You know, are they relating well with siblings or people around them? Do they have a drive to go to work? Are they able to wake up in good time, or are they oversleeping? Are they complaining of physical pain, or are they complaining of headaches? How often are they doing this? I'd like to give a very, very good example. With depression, we diagnose it with 2 weeks of feeling helpless, and so on and so forth. Only 2 weeks. So if you take too much time to intervene for somebody who has already expressed that they are willing to take their lives, then they are not seeing the support that you promise to do. Don't overpromise also. Don't commit to something that you cannot. If it is beyond you, ask for help or ask for support to someone who you think will be able to help you handle this situation. Now, in terms of support groups, because of the sensitivity of the matter, basically, like what happened to me when my brother took his life, it was very depressing. It was overwhelming, and I couldn't even function at work. So what I did is I looked for a therapist and people within my neighborhood who had gone through the same experience, and we formed a group. Then we were receiving therapy at that particular time. So I would urge, because with grieving, when you prolong the period of grieving, then it becomes a challenge. So at that particular time, when you're feeling the pain and you're going through the distress, feel the emotions as they are raw. Look for where you can plug in. Organizations such as Hisia Psychology Consultants is always available, and many others. Send a message. Definitely your message of request for support will not be overlooked just because the organization is not a non-profit organization. We are human beings, and what we do is a service, it's a calling, and it's something we can do even without pay. So that is the support I know there is.
Thank you, Nancy. To Richard and to Jackie, but I want to ask this question first, and it's because Richard mentioned it, and Jackie, you had mentioned it in your video. It might come across a bit insensitive, and Jackie, I don't want to offend, but so what happens in terms of what process does one have to go through with law enforcement when now we're dealing with suicide? Because Richard, you mentioned the police, and Jackie, I know you mentioned the police in your video, but what actually happens? And I'll start with Jackie.
Thank you. For me, when when my son called me, when my daughter rushed back into the room to tell me that Chichi's playing a game, he's swinging with his neck, he's swinging on his neck, I rushed there immediately, and I found it. When a mother's instinct is to remove him. I just because there's a chair. He has a chair where he was doing his weightlifting. There's a chair, then the table, then the loop, the veranda, the banister sort of. I just got up on that table and I removed him from it. It was nothing about. I wanted life for my son. I didn't care. Well, I didn't think about police. I thought about this boy needs oxygen. He needs help. He needs energy. He needs to be removed from there. And somebody called an ambulance. And that's what I started screaming. I just removed him immediately and put him down. And so when I took him down and we rushed him to hospital, and we didn't get oxygen in the first hospital. We got oxygen in the third hospital actually. By that time, he had already passed away. And so now we had to stay there because now he could not be removed from that hospital and taken directly to the mortuary because he had to be booked in. They're booked in a certain way and they're released from the hospital in a certain way. So I never thought about it. But now we had to go to the local chief. The local chief was not there. He referred us to the police post. The police post, it was too, they don't handle that. So we had to go all the way to Advocacy, the police station, the main police station. And for some reason that night, His Excellency was traveling. He was going somewhere. So all the security was outside. So it was a delayed process. It was over 3 hours. We had about a 3-hour delay. And finally, we had to pay, of course, for the fuel. And we had to pay for the lorry and for the cops to actually come and certify. And actually, he has to go in a police lorry to the mortuary. He cannot be taken. He cannot be. Yeah, he has to go in a police mortuary, in a police lorry. But thereafter, since nobody has come to ask me anything, nobody has come to investigate, or nobody has come to look for anything, I removed him and I pulled him down. Like, even if they come, the rope is still there if they want it. Okay. And the evidence is still there. The evidence is still there if they want it. But nobody. Sorry.
Followed up. No. So you're saying nobody has followed up or anything like that?
Nobody has followed up, perhaps maybe because it's actually the police who came to collect him from the hospital, and they proved and they got the history from there. And so, and thereafter, there's also the post-mortem, which also shows what actually happened. Yeah. So I don't know, maybe that was it, or maybe some of these things actually, in retrospect, I've actually inquired quite a bit about it. It's very untidy for both the officers and for the person and the bereaved family. It's really a very messy and untidy thing. And if it can be avoided, I tell you, they would avoid it. And I say this in all humility, not wanting to implicate the police officers in any way, but maybe even in the long term, maybe something like a handbook can be developed, even just to help people out through this process, because there's no set methodology on what can be done. And I'm sure David is going to share a different experience.
Richard, David's father.
David's father. I was going to say.
The son is the one who's called David. Yeah. I'm Richard. Jackie?
Yes.
I'm Richard, not David.
Okay. I've heard you.
David is the loved son I lost.
Okay.
Yeah, so we did much the
Richard.
We did much the same as Jackie did. Because when we went to his room and found him hanging, the first thing we did was to pull him down. There was no question about it. But unfortunately, he'd stayed for quite a while. So, certainly he was already dead. I could see that myself because I checked the pulse. There was no pulse. He was beginning to become cold. But the mother could hear nothing of that. She tried to revive him, blow into his mouth, talking about call an ambulance. And I tried to call her, to cool her. The two sisters were there, so basically, you don't have time to think about what is supposed to happen. You just want to save, because we brought him down because we thought there was still some life in him, but there wasn't. And then, of course, though, we called the police, and they came here. We showed him where the rope was. As Jackie says, the rope was still there. Well, as we removed it later, but it was there. He's lying on the floor. Actually, it was a power cord. Sorry, he took his laptop's power cord. Is the one he hung himself with. So the police. I mean, one of the saddest things is, they wrap him in this blanket, and then it is so final. That blanket. Anyway, we have a bigger son, so we detailed him to follow with the police. His elder brother.
Okay.
We him to follow with the police and get the formalities in place, and we requested that they don't do a postmortem, which they agreed. So there was no postmortem. But we got the documentation, and then now after that, following the death certificate was one of the most difficult things you'll ever find. And the place was a total mess, because you have to go to the city mortuary, then I don't know, you get where, and then you go and get this document, then you come to City Hall. At one point, I just said, I know I lost my son. I don't need a death certificate. I talked to the mother. She agreed with me, so we stopped following it. And that's basically there.
Okay, thank you, Richard. There's a question from one of our viewers. It's something I'd been meaning to ask, and I always get sensitive about time, but I think we'll let this one run. We need to finish this properly. So Nancy, I want to ask the question about genetics, and what role do genetics actually play in aspects of suicide?
Genetics would play a role in the sense that there are some mental health disorders that are passed on from one parent to the other. So these mental health disorders would be major depressive disorder, schizophrenia, bipolar disorders, etc. So when they are passed on from one parent to the other, it means that that person has a chance. It doesn't apply 100% that this person will take their life, but it can be a contributing factor when you add all the other environmental factors in place. So if someone is undergoing an immense amount of stress, and then they have depression, or their parent had ever had major depressive disorder, or they have been exposed to, say, trauma, or they have had their parent talk about a traumatic incident that they had experienced, you find that the child or the person will have a chance of maybe trying to take away their lives because they don't want to experience the pain. If it is, say, depression, then because of the way the mind is wired, if at that particular time they feel worthless, they may feel the need to take their lives. So it has a chance, but we cannot attribute 100% of it to the fact that you took your life because of genetic predisposition.
Okay, thank you so much, Nancy. Now, I'm going to open this question to Richard and Jackie, and feel free. I'll go ladies first, and then I'll ask Richard to answer after Jackie. From the outside looking in, what is the single most important and helpful thing you can do for suicide survivors?
Okay, thank you. The most useful thing, I think, is just to walk with them, to hold their hand, and to give them time. You just have to give them time, because you cannot force a process, and different people process pain and grief differently. I remember immediately the clip went viral. I was inundated with so many calls and so many girls from university, boys who were looking for jobs, boys who had been left by their girlfriends. All of them wanted to take their lives, and I said, gosh, surely, why would you want to place your happiness in the lives of somebody else, in somebody else's hands? You are the one who is in charge of your life, and so therefore the choice is really up to you. I cannot tell you to stop doing this or stop doing that. I cannot dictate to you what works and what does not work, because I don't know you, I don't know your circumstances. But I can just tell you that it's the most painful thing. And I always repeat that if you're a youth, what it will do to your parent, just to see that you have given up your life because of something that you think cannot be solved. And I think the Bible says that there's nothing new under the sun. So there's nothing that you're going to go through that is really new that cannot be worked out. And then I wanted to just answer Dr. on this issue of the professional support. You know, initially, a friend suggested, actually the church suggested that we should go for a counseling session, and we went, and even some friends paid for us to go for a family therapy session. Let me tell you about disaster. That was an emotional disaster. Everybody came out hating the counselor. The children came out hating me. They thought I had fault because I kept insisting that it was the professional thing to do, it was the right thing to do. And I kept literally I forced them to go to the session, and they sat there and they were just sullen, and everybody just cried throughout the session, and there was no help. Nobody got any help. The counselor was frustrated. As we walked out of there without any help. The children are resentful of me, and me, I'm there feeling helpless also not, and we all just cried through an entire 1 hour, and it was totally useless. And so from there, that's when I just discovered what we needed, Jackie's family needed as a family, was just to tell each and every story and each and every pain that you'd ever felt. Anything, you know, any incident that might have caused you to feel guilty and think that perhaps you contributed to his death by doing something. Because you just talked through it and cried through it, and that would give you ultimately the healing that perhaps you might think that you want to get. But it's not necessarily that you must sit with the counselor, because a counselor does not know the background of this family relationship. So having to start explain again to a counselor or a counseling psychologist that this is what happened, and giving the background dilutes the whole thing and even removes dignity from the person who is gone. It's the most painful thing to sit at times through a counseling process and having to explain things to a counselor because the counselor doesn't understand the background. And so but they also cannot help if they don't have certain pieces of information. And you know, everybody works through things differently. Let me tell you that pain can last for so long. I'd like to just share that my daughter right now has been released from her job because she can't cope. She just thinks about her brother all the time and what she could have done, what she did do, what she didn't do. And so what she's been doing is just been drinking. And in the drinking her pain away, she has managed to be released from her job because she just can't perform. She can't function properly anymore. So pain is so relative. I don't, there are no solutions to this thing. While I thank Dr. Nancy for being there and for having the ability to guide the people through their pain, I tell you that to work with them, just give them time. Give the survivors time and just work with them. That's all you can do. Because I know from looking at my children, the small ones, the ones who actually found him, seem to be more resilient than the older ones who had the experiences with him and who went through life with him. Because the elder one is so protective and so pained at his death and at his demise, and yet she's not the talkative one. But the talkative one is the one who is the most pained and has managed to withdraw inside and manage her pain through alcohol. That is so different. For me, it is just to walk with me, because I also get tired of trying to tell people and explaining to people what I feel. I can't tell you what I feel. It's ice in my it's in my system. You just have to open me up and get what I feel from inside. I can't tell you. No words can describe the pain of a mother seeing a child hanging from a rooftop. You cannot. Just walk and hold their hands. Just walk with them. Let them just know that you're there for them. That's all I can say. Thank you.
Richard, what are your sentiments?
Interestingly, we went through the same process. A relative paid a counselor for us. It was also a disaster. I mean, you know, it left us more pained than, you know, the whole thing. And we were supposed to have some 4 or 5 sessions. We only did 2. And we said, thank you very much. Please don't come back. For me, and then I went out to look for support groups. Unfortunately, there are no support groups in this country. I found one in Ongata Rongai, but it's for women. basically for mothers who lost their children to suicide. But as Jackie said, the best thing is just be there for them. Just let them know you're there. You're not asking questions. You're not judging them. You're just there. If they want to talk, they will talk. If they don't want to talk, they will not talk. But just be there for them, period. Nothing else. There's nothing you can say to help. That I can assure you. In fact, if anything you say drives them away, actually hurts them. So you'd rather stay away, actually, if you feel like you must say something. But if you cannot hold somebody's hand and just keep quiet, then don't be near them. And that's it.
Okay. Nancy, you want a right to reply. I'm not going to get into an argument or anything, but I just wanted to, I just wanted to hear your right to reply. Richard and Jacqueline obviously have strong views about this, but I wanted to see from your perspective in terms of, it's not one size fits all. So I just wanted to see what input you had to what Richard and Jackie said.
I'd like to acknowledge first that I understand you're in pain. And I stated when we started this interview that I have also lost a brother very close to me, 11 months apart. So we were playmates and we did so many things together. And the question of what you missed and who can understand your pain are always there. Now, as a therapist, I'd like to say you have a right to express your feelings and how you feel like expressing them, but also being cautious how you express them. It doesn't cause more pain to the people around you, because one of the processes of grief is anger. And this anger could be directed to the people trying to offer you support, and maybe they don't know how to connect with you, or it could be directed to yourself as an individual. Now, when it comes to grief therapy, it is advised that you don't go for grief therapy immediately you have lost this person, because you're still processing, you're still trying to understand and come to terms with the process of death. And because the death is traumatic, it will have an effect on you as a person. So if you don't go for it immediately, then look to go for therapy later, because your behavior, the outcome of your behavior, of your feelings, point to your mental functioning. Now, if you look at yourself as a person playing the role of a mother, or the role of the father, your response to how this process is going will affect even the children behind you, or who are watching you, or the people around you. Definitely, I agree. The society, or we may be judgmental. It also depends. The therapist you get, did you have chemistry? Do they have a background? Do they have experience of something similar? Can they relate to what you're going through? Are you able to pick or learn something or grow from going through this therapeutic process with a person? Now, in terms of support groups, you, Jackie, and you, Richard, and myself, Nancy, we are the ones who are best placed to come up with these support groups, because we are not talking of something foreign, and we are talking of a process we have been through. Jackie, you're a role player in the society. Whatever you do has an impact in helping people. It doesn't stop at that. So maybe we can come together and look for ways to help people who are going through something similar, or who have gone through something similar and have not gained resolve, be able to overcome that, so that even their children or the people they support or who support them don't get affected ultimately by the act of suicide through the person who did or who committed this suicide. I'm sorry, Jackie, that your daughter lost her job, and you can see the behavior is out of the pain she's experiencing. If she's not placed in the hands of a therapist or a psychiatrist to actually overcome that which is not able to put in words, then we are looking at something more dangerous, or a lifestyle that will be tragic in the long run. So let's come together and let's look for ways to be able to support ourselves, because you cannot give strength when yourself you're weak? How do you overcome the pain you are going through? And how can you be able to see life differently? Then how are you able to impact the people around you? That's just my call and my response.
Okay, guys. Sadly, we have to wrap this up. It's an emotional topic, and I can understand. Like, you see, I'm doing this insensitive thing Jackie told me not to do. Yeah, it's a difficult one. I don't think everybody can understand. Those who've gone through it obviously would be able to then relate to a lot of things that both Jackie, Nancy, and Richard have actually said. Mine is to say, it's been an eye opener. There's a lot of things. A lot of people just say, "Oh, suicide," oh, yeah, this is what we've seen and what the movies portray and everything. And when it hits home, I've had two friends who've actually death by suicide. When it hits home, it's not as, you know, it's reality. It is what it is. So I'd like to ask our guests to please give us their parting shots on the subject that we've been discussing today. Anything that you feel would be beneficial to our viewers as your parting shot. And I'll start with Jacqueline. Sorry, your mic. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's back.
Okay. Thank you. Is to appreciate the platform that you have given me, because as I said, I have dedicated it to him, and I have said that in his silence, even though he's quiet, he still speaks, and he still speaks to other youth and other teenagers, and lets them know, other young adults, and tells them that it's not over till it's over. You could always find a solution for something. To speak to mothers and tell them that it's not your fault. Some choices are beyond you, and there are things that you have no control over. And to talk also about mental health and talk about depression, that it is real and it can affect anybody, and to remove the stigma associated with mental health, and to dedicate it once again to my son, Vernon Jerry Chichi Ogola, that you rest in peace, you still speak.
Thank you, Jacqueline. Shall we go, Nancy, your parting shot?
Well, to everybody, definitely the topic suicide is very sensitive. But we need to talk about it more. Let's talk about mental health. If you feel at any one point or another you're overwhelmed by thoughts, or your behaviors are out of the norm, seek professional support. That's why we are there. That's why we exist, to offer you support. And even if you don't feel like coming in for therapy, this can be done virtually at the comfort of wherever you are. If you get a good therapist, they'll be able to pick what you're not saying, and they'll be able to guide you on how to, within your own skills and within your own abilities, how to best address your situation. So feel free, plug in on all the social media available platforms that you can be able to talk or express yourself. And if there are gatherings, when it is safe, look for places you can talk about your pain, because by talking, then we are able to identify where you are and how to support you.
Thank you so much, Nancy. Last but not least, the Duke. I've not called you that this evening, and I'm sure there's a very fascinating story behind the nickname the Duke. Maybe we'll do a show about people's nicknames. But I'm going to leave the final parting shot to you, the Duke. Mato, can you unmute him? Sorry, Richard, just 1 second.
Done?
Yes, okay, now we can, yeah.
Yeah, okay, yeah. So what I was saying was, for me, talking about suicide, death by suicide, is therapeutic for the person who does the talking. For example, myself, I'm out there on social media talking about having lost my son to suicide, and answering questions and empathizing with other people who are going through the same thing. And it's kind of brings it home that it's not a curse, because when we go into those areas where that it's a curse which comes along, whatever, it gives a completely different dimension. But we want to demystify the fact that somebody has that battle. Again, that poem that I sent, which I hope I think I've shared it somewhere on my Facebook or something like that. But this is a battle that this person has been fighting, which we don't know anything about. We must appreciate that that person has been very strong. We must not condemn them. And that's why I say that it is not committing suicide, it's death by suicide, because it is not like we don't want to pretend or to assume that they did wrong. At that point, you look at it personally, I look at it as the only option, somebody who is loved, somebody who knows they can turn to their father, to their mother, to their sister, to their brother, and they decide that is the only way. You can just imagine, and this is a grown-up person, you just imagine that person, whatever, I don't want to call them devils, but whatever battles that this person has been having overwhelmed him or her. And that was the only way out at that point. It can't be undone. But talking about it and accepting the reality that we have mental issues all over, and then learning to deal with them will help a lot of ways. I know I have talked to, there's a young man called Gr8 who runs an outfit called Mental 360, which is trying to talk to young people about their mental issues. And again, as Nancy does also. And there are several other bodies. And by the way, when I say that the therapist we got, didn't work, doesn't mean that it is not necessary. It's only maybe, as Nancy also mentioned, that maybe it was too soon, because I think it was just the week after. So maybe over time, first of all, you need to be given time to, kind of process what has happened, and then realize, come to the reality, do a reality check and realize, yes, that was final. Now, how do I start dealing with it? From that position, maybe then, it kind of gives, it removes the trauma that this person has and allows them and enables them to live a normal life. So let us keep on talking about mental health, about suicide, about the issues that are confronting us as a nation, as a society. Let us be open for each other, but let us not judge anybody. Let us not think that we know everything, that I know that because your son died of suicide, you should have done ABCD. That is so cruel. You cannot imagine. It's like putting a knife in the person's stomach and turning it. It is so cruel. So just be there for them, keep quiet, listen to them, let them process everything in their own good time.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to say to Nancy, Jacqueline, and Richard, I don't think I have the words to say. I've already put it up in terms of calling you guys absolutely amazing. Thank you for taking the time and sharing your experiences and your strengths in terms of what you've gone through. And yeah, mine is just to say I'm lost for words. Thank you so much. Martin, it's not like you to be quiet.
I gave the floor to Jackie, Richard, and Nancy. And first of all, we're truly grateful that you accepted to come and share your stories on the show. What can I say? If you remember Schindler's words, if I could save one more life, and I feel this is what you have done tonight. By coming out and speaking, there is someone out there whose maybe life and destiny has changed forever, for the better. So thank you so much. Keep doing what you're doing. Keep on with the good work, and yeah, and we'll keep the dialogue going. I hope this is not the last of this continuous engagement. Let's see what feedback we will get, and I'm sure based on the direct messages I got before this show, I'm sure there'll be more to come after the show. So kindly we reach out to you again on behalf of the audience. Let's see how we are going to assist anyone out there that needs assistance through, of course, dialogue. Thank you so much. And to those watching us at home there, we've done the first part, and we're looking forward to doing a part 2 tomorrow, next week. Let's see how it's going to play out. Of course, we'll keep you informed in due time. Thank you for watching. And we've all gone through the journey of Richard, Jackie, and Nancy. We wish them well. We we pray for the loved ones, and many of us who've also lost our loved ones. So it's good night from Nairobi, and see you next week.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye.
Yeah.